Breaking news. Make this the century of women's equality, said UN chief. The 21st century must be the century of women's equality. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said in a call to transform the world by ensuring equal participation for all. The UN had proclaimed himself a feminist in a speech to academics and students at the New School in New York City. He thinks that 21st century women's inequality is foolish, like slavery and colonialism. According to the UN head, sexism and gender inequality persist worldwide. The problem is power, since male-dominated power structure support national economies, political institutions, business systems, and more. However, patriarchy also traps men and boys in gender norms, requiring systematic transformation. He thinks that dismantling gender disparity would reshape the globe and solve intractable global issues like war, violence, and the climate disasters. The UN is working to eradicate the gender pay gap, repeal discriminatory legislation, protect women and girls from abuse, close the education and digital technology gap for girls, and provide full access to sexual and reproductive health services and rights. Women may lead organizations when the power is dispersed equally. Otherwise, power's abuse of men harms our communities. He admits that we must urgently transform and redistribute power if we are to safeguard our future and our planet. Gender equality has never been a problem out of date for the UN and for the world. Gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. The UN has captured this goal of paramount importance in Sustainable Development Goals number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, and 2030 will set the deadline for the realization of SDG 5. The UAE ranked as the leading country in gender equality in the Arab region, according to the World Economic Forum 2022. Yet, was it really our whole picture? What are the achievements and challenges awaiting us before our women and female children can finally be safe in their own home? Today, I have invited 3 special delegates from the United Nations to guide us through UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Let's hear from Mr. Fook about what exactly SDG is and what the UN has set the targets for SDG 5.
Thank you for the honor to speak on BBC. So, let's go to the introduction of the Goal 5. So, how do you understand the 5th goal of the UN's, the gender equality? So, the gender equality is a goal in itself and a prerequisite for sustainable and peaceful development. The gender equality exists when the women, men, girls, and boys have equal rights, circumstances, and chances to form their own lives and contribute to society. The power, the influence, and the resources must be distributed fairly. The women and girls must gain authority. When the women and girls have equal access to resources and information, the society prospers. Women's identity drives growth. So, there are some considerable facts. The figures are also included. Let's move to the first one. The awareness of violence against older women is growing, but data remain limited. In globally, 26% of ever partnered women aged 15 and older, 641 million, have been subject to physical and sexual violence by a husband or intimate partner at least once in their life. It's so dangerous. And next one is the child marriage and female genital mutilations are present human rights violations, holding back progress for girls and women. In 2021, nearly 1 in 5 young women were married before the age of 18. 35% and 28% of young women were married in childhood, respectively in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. At least 200 million girls and women today have been subjected to female genital mutilation, mainly in 31 countries. And the progress in women's access to leadership positions in both political and economic spheres remains sluggish. As of the 1st January 2022, the global share of women in lower and single houses of the national parliament reached like 26.2% up to 22.4% in 2015. In 2019, before the pandemic, women account for 39.4% of total employment. In 2020, women represent nearly 45% of global employment losses, and the share of the women in managerial positions worldwide increased from 27.2 to 28.3 from 2015 to 2019, but remained unchanged from 2019 to 2020, the first year without an increase since 2013. In many countries, women still lack the legal rights to autonomy over their own bodies. Between 2007 and 2021, 57% of women aged like from 15 to 49 who are married or in a union made their own informed decision regarding sexual relations, contraceptive use, and reproductive health care. In the first year of the pandemic, an estimated 1.4 million additional unintended pregnancies occurred in lower and middle income countries. Let's move. Oh, here we got some figures. We can see that here's the global prevalence of physical and sexual intimidate partner violence against every partner woman, as I said in 2019. Here's the graph showing the woman in managerial position in 2015 and 2020. And here's the proportion of women aged from 15 to 49 who make their own informed decisions regarding the sexual relations. So let's move to the targets of the UN in this goal. The first target is end discrimination against women and rights, as the UN defined that, to end all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere. The second one is end all violence against and exploitation of women and girls, which is eliminate all forms of violence against all women and girls in the public and private spheres, including trafficking and sexual and other types of exploitation. The third one is to eliminate forced marriage and genital mutilation, which is eliminate all harmful practices such as child, early, and forced marriage and female genital mutilations. The fourth one is to value unpaid care and promote shared domestic responsibilities, which to recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work through the provision of public services, infrastructure and social protection policies, and the promotion of shared responsibility within the household and the family as nationality appropriate. The fifth one is the ensure full participation in leadership and decision making, which is ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership and other levels of decision making in political, economic, and public life. The sixth one is the universal access to reproductive rights and health, to ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights as agreed in accordance in the Program of Action of the International Conference on Population and Development and the Beijing Platform for Action and the outcome documents of the review conference. The seventh one, which is A1, equal rights to economic resources, property ownership, and financial services. To undertake the reforms to give the woman equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to ownership and control over lands and other forms of property, financial services, inheritance, and natural resources, in accordance with national law. The B1 is the promote empowerment of women through technology, which can be understood that to enhance the use of enabling technology, in particular information and communication technology, to promote the empowerment of women. And the last one is to adopt and strengthen policies and enforceable legislation for gender equality. To adopt and strengthen sound policies and enforceable legislation for the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and rights at all levels.
Having listened to what the UN's SDG targets are, I can't help but wonder where our country is currently standing on the global landscape. Let's all find out through this short video and the subsequent analysis of Mr. Nhật Minh and Mrs. Châu.
If looking into gender equality internationally, the UAE only ranked 85th among 163 countries with just more than average index score. Regarding the SDGs 5, gender equalities, while there are some significant challenges remaining in the score of the index lowly with less than 50% of required rate. But within that regions, the UAE ranked first in the Middle East and North Africa on quality structures to support SDGs at national level and ranked second in the regions just behind Israel's. Therefore, we cannot deny the UAE efforts in closing the gap of gender inequalities, especially there are some indicators the UAE ranked first globally. In the past decades, UAE has made a lot of actions for gender equality improvement, and the most outstanding actions is becoming a signatories of CEDAW and having UAE gender balanced cultures. To be more specific, in 2004, the UAE became a signatories of United Nations Conventions on Eliminations of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. The UAE regularly participates in and hosts international conferences on women issues and has signed all international treaties on protecting the rights of women. And in 2019, under leadership of UAE Gender Balance Councils, the country introduced historic reform to enhance women economic empowerment. The reform in the UAE have brought greater legal equalities for the women of the countries and support their participation in the economies for generations to come. What is even more inspiring is the ripple effects of UAE reforms in other countries. Jordan equalized passport procedures, and the Central Bank of Jordan prohibited gender-based discrimination in access to financial services. Egypt and Tunisia are now starting similar reform efforts to introduce gender-neutral provisions in labor law, personal status law, and banking regulations. In the target 5.1 and all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere. In this target, we will divide it into three parts, which are workplace, education, and marriage. In the for women rights at workplace, last year the UAE became the first country in the Middle East and North Africa regions to introduce paid parental leave for employees in private sectors. And over the last few years, the government of UAE made gender equalities and women economic empowerment are top policy priorities. In 2019, under leadership of UAE Gender Balance Councils, the countries introduced historic reform in the policies. We have the 2020s law on equal wages. Female employees shall receive wages equal to that of male if they perform the same work or another of equal value. In 2017 Gender Balance Guide, this is the actions for UAE organizations prepare for organizations of economics cooperations and development. And the last policy is the paid parental leave for employees in private sectors. This is a part of broad reform package enacted by UAE to support women labor force participations. The next sections is the educations and the literacy rate of both women and men in UAE was 1995 in 2019. Today, more women and men complete higher and adult educations and enrolls in universities and postgraduate institutions. About the policies of educations, we have the June 2017, the UN Human Rights Councils passed the draft regulations to force the UAE on girls' right to receive educations. And in June 2014, the UAE also initiates a joint statement by 75 countries at the Human Rights Councils, which condemn attacks on girls who attend or wish to attend school. About the marriage sectors, the marriage, family, and divorce law in UAE can seem contradictory and confusing. For example, men can marry up to 4 wives if they can support them all equally, and they can also immediately divorce their wives. However, wives just must apply for a court order. And despite the criticisms by international and local human rights groups, UAE have made progressive steps to domestic violence, especially with passing the family protection policy in 2019. This policy broadened the definitions of domestic violence to encompass any abuse, aggressions, or threats by family member directed at another family member that cause physical and psychological injuries. And in addition to existing penalties, the new laws have instituted specific punishment for domestic violence and sexual abuse offenders. In the targets 5.2, eliminate all forms of violence against all women and girls in public and private spheres, including trafficking and sexual and other types of exploitations. Domestics and all other forms of abuse are severely penalized under UAE laws through series of legislations. For example, physical abuse, if there are any mark of abuse, so the married women are eligible to ask for a divorce while receiving custody of children, financial support, and compensations by default in many cases. However, in COVID-19, intimate partner violence remained a serious human rights violation and an important health concern in UAE. So the exposure of women to any type of IPV during the lockdown has significantly increased compared to before the lockdown. So the policy for these situations, the UAE Prime Minister in 2019 approved a new no tolerance policy on domestic violence in the countries, and the family protections policy will prevent violence against women, children, and elderly and other vulnerable populations. The next target is eliminate all harmful practice, such as child, early and forced marriage, and female genital mutilations. According to the official statistic, the legal age for marriage in the UAE is 18 years old for all, and the average age of marriage for women is 22, 24. However, despite the lack of accurate and recent data, there is concern that child marriage still widespread in the UAE. And in 2001, in its report on the early marriage, the UNICEF estimates that 55% of women younger than 20 years old were already married, and the girls as young as 11 and 12 are reportedly trafficked into UAE under the use of legal marriage. According to the 2015 report, men from UAE purchase Egyptians women for the purpose of forced labor and prostitutions. So the policy for this human trafficking, the federal law number 51 in 2006. So under this law, the human trafficking includes all forms of sexual exploitations, engaging others, prostitutions, forced labor, um, enslavement, begging, and quasi-slavery practice. In the targets of 5.4, value unpaid care and promote shares domestic responsibilities. The UAE, in these current situations, recognize and value unpaid domestic work of women through provisions of public services, infrastructures, and social protections policy, and the promotion of shared responsibility within the household. According to the federal Law number 2 of 2001, monthly assistance is provided to the following categories of UAE nationals residing within the UAE, like widows, abandoned women, UAE national women married to expatriate men.
Thanks a lot for the informative session, Ms. Chow. I'm gonna continue on with her work here with target 5.5. It is to ensure full participation in leadership and decision making. So so far, this target has witnessed the clearest and most effective progress in the goal to achieve SDG number 5 of UAE. Looking into the indicator 5.5.1, where we can see that UAE is now having the biggest absolute change between 1997 and 2021 in terms of proportion of seats held by women in national parliament, adding up to 50%. What is more staggering is that in 1997, not a single woman had a seat in the national parliament of UAE. The second thing I want to talk about is the share of women in ministerial positions is also relatively high compared to other nations in the region, and not just the Middle East and North Africa region. We are mentioning the whole world. So this is quite an impressive rate from UAE. And thirdly, women make up 30% of the diplomatic corps. UAE has started appointing women as ambassadors ever since 2009. Continue on with the situation. So at the moment, 9 out of 33 ministers of UAE are women, and women is accounting for 66% of the public workforce, while 30% of them are having leadership roles, and 15% of them is having roles in technology or academic. And how did UAE achieve that? Thanks to these two policies. In 2012, it is mandatory to have a female board members in every company and government agency across UAE. And the second thing is that Emirati women must occupy 50% of the Federal National Council. That explains the staggering rates of women participation in politics and managerial roles. Continuing on with SDG indicator 5.5.2, we can see that the proportion of women in senior and middle management positions is not so high compared to other countries in the Middle East. So, which means that UAE has to try harder to increase the percentage. One policy that was created to support this situation is the Security and Commodities Authority's announcements in 2021. It announced that all listed companies in UAE are required to have at least one female member on their board of directors. The next thing to consider is the Target 5.6, universal access to reproductive rights and health. UAE is now having a robust healthcare system in place. It is one of the best regions in the world, and it is well equipped to handle all kinds of women's health concerns. The expected life expectancy of a male in UAE is only 76, while the figure is 78 for women. And the assessing of women's healthcare services is straightforward enough, provided you have medical insurance. All hospitals now offer tailor-made packages depending on your age, sex, and personal medical history. And the SEAHA Association of UAE reveals that women account for 68% of its workforce in the healthcare sector, including nearly 6,000 female nursing staff and 2,500 ambulatory healthcare services personnel who successfully completed their mission during the heights of COVID-19 pandemic. So to support this target, two outrageous policies have been introduced. In 2015, the National Strategy for Empowerment of Emirati Women aims at providing healthcare services to women in order to enhance her body and psychological health. During the phase of 2017 and 2021, the National Strategy for Motherhood and Childhood was erected with the aim of enhancing the right of children and mothers to get comprehensive health care in a sustainable health environment. So that's for target 5.6. Now we move to 5.8, which means equal rights to economic resources, property ownerships, and financial services. So in UAE, as most countries in Arab region, men and women now have equal ownership to immovable rights. It means that they have the right to buy property as well as acquire a mortgage. According to recent studies, 30% of the property in the UAE is now owned by women. And one big policy was created for UAE to have such outstanding results is the Sheikh Zayed housing program, which offers free housing for single and widow Emirati women, published in 1999. Another target that UAE is trying to complete in order to achieve SDG number 5 is the 5B, promote empowerment of women through technology. Another outstanding figure of UAE is that the gender disparity has narrowed considerably at the UAE's ICT education level. According to a survey that women in science, technology, engineering reveals that more women are currently studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics at UAE government universities than men. Furthermore, in STEM-related course, the number of female graduates has reached 56.8% at government universities. And of course, thanks to the great policy that was provided to women in this case, the multiple online services for women, we can see that family consultation, helpline service, or cancer screening recommendations are all wonderful online service that empowers women in UAE. And coming to the last target of SDG number 5, that is 5C, adopt and strengthen policy and enforceable legislation for gender equality. So the situation is that we have the socio-economic empowerment of women has been taken care of since 1973, when the Renaissance of Abu Dhabi Women Association was held. Since then, the UAE has implemented a number of economic empowerment of women in the UAE, and also to empower Emirati women even more, they even created a day for them. Since 2015, it is the Women's Day of Emirati women, celebrated annually on August 2. And of course, we already mentioned this policy, which means the National Strategy for Empowerment of Emirati Women. This policy was successfully carried as it was able to empower women through technology.
These are all very promising facts and figures, but was there all to it? What may be the limitations of the UAE in terms of gender equality attainment, Ms. Ling?
So, firstly, we'll talk about the limitations of Target 5.1. There are five limitations. The first one, that only Emirati men can pass on citizenship to the offspring. That means that the children of Emirati woman mother or international father stateless and no birth certificate are issued to them. A second question is issued that type of marriage and divorce. Currently, a man is able to end the marriage with a few spoken word, but a woman needs the written permission of a man guardian to enter or leave the marriage. And women who work without their husband consent can be considered to be misbehaving. Legally, a wife only has the custody until the children are 30 for girl or 11 for boy. And if a husband and wife divorce, a husband can insist on full custody for those age. After those age, and UAE still lack clear regulation on reporting domestic violence, especially sexual abuse incidents. And even though UAE federal law severely punish rape and sexual assault offenders, there still exists a reporting investigation gap, with the law placing a heavy burden of proof on the victim. And talking the net is the target 5.2 and target 5.3. Talking about the target 5.2, the domestic violence reinforce the male guardian ability to discipline their wife, female relative, and children to an extent that authority acceptable. The law also did not criminalize marital rape. In 2019 and 2020, a woman in the UAE can still lose her right to financial maintenance from her husband if she refuses to have sexual relations with him without a lawful excuse. And a judge can also deem a woman in breach of her special obligation if she leaves the house or takes a job deemed outside the law, custom, or necessity of the judge consider it against the family interest. The judge are more likely to consider it unnecessary for a woman than a man, resulting in a discriminations against women, unnecessary for a woman to work. And about the target 5.3, under the federal law on personal status 2005, the minimum legal age of marriage is the 18 years old. However, individuals who have reached puberty may marry before 18 years old with the judicial consent. and there's no limitations at the target 5.4. About the target 5.5, the conditions surrounding women and family life remain an obstacle for women to participate in the labor force as well as leadership and decision-making roles, and the limitations of the Target 5.6, there are three limitations. Abortion is prohibited, lack of awareness about the reproductive health issues, as well as certain inhibition blocking the way of education of this topic among women. And there are some problems remaining that preventing women fertility rate. Now we move to the target 5.B and 5.C. The target 5.B limitation that there are a large portion of female underrepresented on the ICT sector. There are also working balance, work-life balance challenge, and also there are existing stereotype and attitude that prevent women to entering the workplace. Talking the last but not least is the target 5.C. Policies and legislations up until now are largely influenced by men.
So, how likely is it that the UAE will achieve their goals until 2013, you might say? As far as I'm concerned, not very likely. From our analysis above, it is clear that there remains deep-rooted legal and practical gaps in the majority of our SDG targets, most critically in areas of discrimination, women's rights in marriage, harmful practices, and reproductive and sexual health, as indicated in Target 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and 5.6. These cannot be immediately solved, that is, in a span of less than 10 years. The only target that we seem to have attained considerably and might meet the eventual target should be the equal rights to land ownership, as well as a system to quantify gender equality in the UAE. In 10 years, Target 5A, 5C will incrementally be realized via new initiatives and legal reforms to include any shortcoming left. So, to attain the SDG targets for gender equality on 2030, UAE need to take action with urgency. First thing first, UAE ought to reshape priorities in achieving SDG targets. The UAE recent women's rights reform is a step in the right direction, but in truth, they do not go far enough to dismantle the deep discrimination against women in law and practices. With limited resources but multiple objectives to realize, UAE ought to revamp its SDG 5 priorities. Our suggestion remains that in the short term, UAE should take priorities in legal and practical manners in these four niches: marriage discrimination, violence against women, harmful practices, and reproductive rights, reflected in targets 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and 5.6. Moreover, as the core competency and what set UAE different from any Arab country, UAE ought to resolve deeper issues and foster the leadership and employment of women, which is reflected in Target 5.5. Second, for the abolition of marriage discrimination, violence against women, harmful practices, the most essential matter is to revamp the legal frameworks to induce in-depth reforms for marriage equality and felony against women. Legal inequalities will remain at the roots of UAE's inability to probe in and make radical changes to the gender landscape. Thus, we would advocate that new laws be moved forward while with corresponding punishment on violation, while existing fault be rectified to bridge any remaining gaps. Specifically, we would suggest the amendment of the Personal Status Law and the Penal Code. For example, the Personal Status Law can amend the definition of domestic violence, enact new regulation on reporting domestic violence, especially sexual abuse incidents, and completely ban child marriage and abolish any rights to judicial consent. While the Penal Code can reenact punishment against consensual sexual relations outside marriage and explicitly criminalize marital rape. Thirdly, for the development of reproductive and sexual health, the construction of new health facilities, as well as the fostering of sexual education is of paramount importance. First, services across a variety of sectors must be strengthened, from health, including the health workforce, to education system, to transport system, which are required to ensure health care is accessible. We should also provide training courses to transfer knowledge and enhance skills of healthcare providers. Third, we can provide subsidies for essential health supplies such as contraceptives, life-saving medicines, and basic medical equipment. Finally, we should include comprehensive sexual education in its initiatives. The inclusion of comprehensive sexual education will teach young women in their communities about consent, contraception, and unintended pregnancy. Take an example from India, who set up the YP Foundation, a progressive curriculum to teach young people about gender equality, sexual diversity, and consent via plays and acts. Finally, to meet Target 5.5, the most essential matter is to implement novel initiatives to lift obstacles and foster women's role and condition in labor and leadership. The UAE government should lift obstacles in the workforce for women by addressing gender discrimination in the workplace, allow women value in the labor market, and supporting women within non-traditional sectors like STEM. We should also enhance entrepreneurship development opportunities for women to increase financing, training opportunities, etc. We should implement tax reduction, facilitate loans, bank guarantees, microcredit system, etc. to enhance female-run enterprise across the region. We also should enhance and initiate more care policies and provision that promote a sustainable work-life balance for women, such as our existing Federal Decree Law No. 33